The BMW M3 is easily the best sedan ever made, and right behind me I've got two of the best models that they offer, the BMW F80 M3 and the BMW G80 M3. And today we're going to compare both of them and see exactly which one you should buy. Should you buy the rear-wheel drive S55 powered F80 M3, or should you upgrade to the S58 powered G80 M3? Because even though both these cars share the same badge, I'd argue that the G80 is just a better version of an M340 rather than the next version of the F80 M3. So today we're comparing the F80 M3 to the G80 M3 to see which one you should really buy. So let's start off by talking about the biggest difference between both of these cars, and that is the engines. So the F80 M3, including the F82 M4 and F87 M2 competition, has the BMW S55 engine. And this engine, regardless of what anyone says, is freaking awesome because this thing just drives so well. It comes with this beautiful carbon fiber strut brace under the hood, which I love, and he also has intakes on here. The S55 is very motorsport focused. When you drive this thing, you feel like you're really driving a good race car. Because after all, that's what the M3 was supposed to be. It's supposed to be a race car sedan. It is BMW's flagship model. Even though it's not a race car, it's supposed to feel like you're in one while still having 4 doors for the whole family. And don't believe anyone who tells you that this engine is not reliable, because it is very reliable. Obviously, there is one issue, and that is the crank hub issue, but he's got his crank hub all done, and I've heard that issue only really affects something like 1 to 2% of all S55 powered cars. The way that you blow it is just over torquing the engine, mostly through downshifting or beating on the car, but once you get that issue addressed, there is absolutely nothing to worry about. Coming over to the G80, including the G87 M2 and G82 M4, this is powered by the BMW S58 engine, which I'd say is more closer to the B58 than it is to this, the S55. I always tell people the S58 is like the S55 and B58 had a baby, because you get the motorsport feel from the S55 and the tunability and reliability from the B58. And that is all put into one engine, and this one is truly built off the B58 platform rather than just being the next rendition of the S55. You do get that motorsport feel in this engine because it is an M car. The S58 also comes with more horsepower from the factory. The S55 comes with around 444 horsepower on the competition models, and the S58 sits at about 503 for pretty much every single model except the G87 M2, which is slightly nerfed, because if they put the full power in that, then nobody would buy a G82 M4. But out of these two engines, which one would I rather have? I've got to be honest, I'm going with the S58 because this thing is just completely bulletproof. There's no crank hub issue, even though that issue is very small, and it's also much stronger and much better for what I like to do, which is modifying my car. The S58 with bolt-ons and an E50 tune makes easily 750 horsepower to the wheel, whereas the S55 makes closer to 550 horsepower to the wheel when modified. But just talking about the engines, you don't get the full story, because there's so much more that goes into performance and horsepower than just your engine. Mainly this thing right here, the transmission. F80 M3 has a dual clutch transmission, which is a lot better for good old motorsport feel, which is a very common theme for this car. But the G80 M3 comes with a ZF 8-speed torque converter transmission, which doesn't feel as good as the DCT in the F80. And there is debate between which one shifts faster. I'd say with an XHP transmission tune, this one does shift faster. But if you're comparing stock to stock, as you should, I think the DCT might shift a lot faster. But the biggest difference is how it feels. The ZF 8-speed doesn't really have much like transmission feel when you shift through the gears, whereas the dual clutch transmission in the F80 M3 does have a lot of feel, and you can feel every single gear as you go up and up. And the last thing we have to talk about when it comes to performance is the drivetrain, because this car, it comes in all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, whereas the F80 only comes in rear-wheel drive. And I'd say that most G80 owners are going to buy or want to buy that car in all-wheel drive, because that's really the main attraction to this car. You get crazy tuning potential and crazy horsepower numbers, but you also have all-wheel drive to put that power to the ground. With the F80, you get rear-wheel drive for fun, and that's exactly what this car is. It's much more fun than that other car over there, because the final thing in terms of performance I want to talk about is the driving and steering feel in these cars. The F80 has much heavier steering, so this car is a lot better for going in corners, and a lot of people even convert this car to a drift car because yes, it's that good. You can get 550 horsepower to those rear wheels in a car that also weighs a lot lighter than this one. In its all-wheel drive form, the G80 weighs somewhere close to 4,000 pounds, whereas the F80 weighs closer to 3,600. So in terms of overall performance, which one would I really give the edge to? Well, it really depends on what kind of person you are and what you want out of a car. This one is more of a motorsport car for having fun, whereas this one is more of a better daily driver and just a well-rounded car. That all-wheel drive system makes this car good for gripping and great for drag racing. And the rear-wheel drive in this car plus the lighter weight makes this thing great for drifting. So if you want to do old school BMW things, maybe slide around a corner, go ahead and get an F80. But if you're a newer BMW guy and you like to drag race, then go ahead and get a G80 M3, because that all-wheel drive is something you absolutely need. So I think it's safe to say that the G80 M3 is the best M3 for drag racing, but I think the F80 M3 is a much better M3 for drifting and having fun. There is a lot more that goes into a car than just performance, obviously, because I know most of you guys who are buying these cars, this is probably going to be your only car, so you need it to be a good daily as well. Well, let's first talk about the interiors of both of these cars and figure out which one is the better car to be a daily driver. This is my G80. I have the LCI screen, so I do have a larger, bigger screen in here. Everything looks pretty good in here, but the main thing I do have to talk about in this car is the carbon bucket seats, because not only do I have bucket seats, but he also has the competition seats, so they're pretty much the same exact ones. This is just a newer version of them. These carbon bucket seats aren't very uncomfortable. However, if you are a bigger dude, I can definitely see how they could be uncomfortable. And the reason is not really because of the back support, mostly because of the side bolsters. It's very hard to get in. It's very hard to get in and out of these, but once you're in and you're good. There is also plenty of room in the back for passengers, but both cars are going to be pretty much the same exact way when it comes to passengers and how much space they'll have in the back. The biggest thing I want to talk about is this one does have a digital dash, which is not touchscreen here, but is touchscreen over here. Let me show you right here. So it is really nice having the digital dash. I also have my climate controls in here. If you don't want that, you might have to get a pre-LCI 2022 G80 M3. This is what the digital dash looks like in the G80, so let's hop over to the F80 and see how it's different. Plenty of room also here in the back of the F80. Let's hop in the front. I think the biggest difference between these, mainly the seats. You don't really have these side bolsters for the bucket seats in this car. Most of the bolstering comes from the side themselves. So this is really the main bolster you'll have here, whereas the G80 had the ones on the side as well. These are really just regular seats with more bolstering. Everything in the F80 feels a lot more analog than over in the G80. If you're a fan of technology, you're going to want the G80 a little bit more. But if you want just something that's not really going to go out of style, not going to look old in a couple years, I think the F80 does that really well. These are just regular analog gauges. You have the screen up there, which his is actually touchscreen. Not all of them come touchscreen. I believe only the 2017 or 2018 Plus come touchscreen. He's also got all the buttons here for all your climate. And one of my favorite features in every BMW ever is these buttons right here. You can have them pre-selected to whatever presets you want, and you can just slide your finger over. You see on the screen, it's going to go over to whatever you want. So you want to go to, I guess, your media and radio, click one. Now the G80 does not have that at all. And it's one of my favorite features in BMWs that I really miss. So I had this in my Supra, and I also had it in my M340. I'd say the interior in the G80 feels a lot more new and a lot more updated, but the F80 isn't bad. It doesn't mean that this car is old. But I feel like in 10 years time, the G80 might feel a little bit old, because with the screens in that car, you're always going to get new screens, faster screens, ones that look better, ones that feel better. But there's really nothing in this car that can get old. Yes, there's plastic. Yes, there's old buttons and stuff, which is not the newest technology, but this just looks like every car. You hop in here and it doesn't feel old. But which one of these two cars is the better daily driver? Well, like I said, the G80 is all-wheel drive, so if you live somewhere where you need that, maybe somewhere where it snows a lot, then you obviously have to get the all-wheel drive one. I really think the G80 is the better daily driver than the F80, but the F80, like I said, is not bad. If you like the old school analog feel and you don't like all the crazy screens in these newer cars like the G80 has, then you're going to want to go ahead and pick that car, because I know that even though these screens are nice, they're just not for everyone. Also, I think the bucket seats in the F80 are a lot better to daily, but this car, like I said, is not bad either. But one important factor that we haven't spoken about is the price, and it's arguably the biggest factor of them all. Well, the F80 can be found for somewhere around 40 to 50K. The G80, on the other hand, is almost double the price, sitting at around $80,000 and going up to almost $100,000. Now, would I ever pay 100 grand for an M3? No, absolutely not. I paid around 86K for this, but this is an anniversary edition, individual color, fully loaded, and all that. Hector's car is an F80 M3 competition where he paid around 50 grand for this. But you can find early model non-competition M3s for around the 40 to 45K range. And even some competitions go for around 45K as well. The G80 has a lot more options because you pretty much have to upgrade to the competition model in order to get an automatic. So you can get this car in a manual. You can also get this car in a manual, but most people want that automatic X-Drive, and that one easily goes for over 80. But if you're choosing between both of these cars, you want a cheaper car, you've just got to go with the F80. But if you want the best car and you just don't have a budget, then obviously the G80 is the clear winner. If you're somewhere in the middle and you're looking around the $70,000 range, you can either get a cheaper X-Drive G80 or a very high-spec F80 M3. Which one of those would I rather buy? I think I'd probably go ahead and get the G80. Now, is it worth the price jump to go ahead and jump into this car from the F80? Maybe, maybe not. It really just depends on who you are. If you only care about handling and how your car drives, then just stick with the F80. There's really no reason to upgrade to the G80 because this car just doesn't drive that much better than the F80 does. But if you're chasing speed, power, and big numbers, then you've just got to go ahead and pick this one. I would really argue that the G80 is just a better version or a true M version of the M340, whereas the F80 is kind of its own thing because this car focuses on how fun it is to drive and just how good it handles. Even though that car does handle better because it's all-wheel drive, this car feels like it handles better. And this car is just trying to be a jack of all trades. It's trying to be the best daily driver. It's trying to be the fastest on the drag strip, and it's also trying to handle really well because it still is an M car. This car, the F80, feels like just the next version of an E90 M3, whereas this car doesn't. The G80 doesn't really feel like an F80. The G80 feels like an M340 with more M suspension, M steering, and M everything. And every time someone with an M340 asks me if they should upgrade to a car, which one they should get, this is obviously the only answer I tell them, because this car is an M340 to the max. But this car is not an F80 to the max, because these cars, although they share the same badge, badge, like I said, they are still vastly different. It's crazy how two cars with the same exact badge could just be so different, drive so differently, and have so many different things to offer. Don't forget to subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and which one you would pick, the G80 or the F80. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ryan, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace, guys.